Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about rising Gemini. So first, let me get my phone out of my pocket. First, I'm going to give you some characteristics about the rising Gemini sign. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the descendant. So that ends up being your relationship needs, rising Gemini. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a celebrity chart of somebody who I think represents energy that is Gemini very well. And I'm really excited about the celebrity chart because I really love this person and I love Gemini energy. So let's get into it. So Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of intellect. It's the planet of communication and speed. So the way that you got your ascendant, rising Gemini, is basically your formative years. All the people that were around you in your formative years, they kind of put your ascendant together. And I like to call the ascendant your little spacesuit. And the reason for that is because the ascendant, it's actually not your mask. It's not that flimsy. It's really more of a vehicle that gets you through life. And because of that, I call it a spacesuit, because this spacesuit was tailor-made specifically for you so that you could survive in the environment that you were growing up in. And this environment is like a new world, and it needs special traits for you to be able to survive. And because of this, you develop your ascendant. So all the people that were around you, I like to think of them as kind of like carefully stitching your ascendant for you. And they were telling you, hey, like you need to patch this on here. You need to patch this on here. These are the characteristics that you're gonna need in order to thrive and survive in this environment. So the environment ends up being wherever you were. So whether you were alone, whether you had a lot of siblings, whether you grew up in a happy environment, in a difficult environment, however it was, those were the messages that you heard that really formed that ascendant for you, that little, spacesuit. So in order for you to have that rising Gemini, you had to leave traits behind in the 12th house. So what is it that you left behind in the 12th house? So you left behind Taurus in the 12th house. So this becomes interesting if you have a Taurus planet. So it's just like, how did I leave those behind? And how did I come into this world with just Gemini energy? So 12th house is very interesting, and I'll be making a separate video about that. But essentially, you kind of keep those traits dormant within you in a more psychological state, and they don't become physically available to you unless you like reach in there into the 12th house. But enough about that. So what did you leave behind in the 12th house? You left behind the comfy sign of Taurus, Gemini. So you traded the stability of Taurus and you traded it for the energy of Gemini. So you went from slow, which is Taurus, to swift, which is Gemini. So Taurus takes their time to do everything. In order to make a decision, they take their time. In order to approach somebody, they take their time. In order to finish something, they take their time. And the reason for that is because they want to make sure that everything is going to be stable, that everything is going to last 100 years. They need it to last 100, 200, 300 years. Gemini is not concerned with that. Gemini is more concerned with, what can I get done quickly in order to move on to the next thing? Because Gemini is a very quick sign. They're ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is very fast. And Gemini really, they're here to interact with everything that they can get their hands on. Anything that's interesting, that puzzles their mind and intrigues them, they want to get into that. And because the world is so vast, they don't want to spend all their time on this one thing. They want to just do the thing and just move on to the next one. That's how Gemini thinks. So they don't really think too much about stability and the long term. They're thinking about now and how I feel now and in a few weeks, and we'll see how things change in a few weeks. So you left behind that stability, that need for stability. You traded the stubbornness of Taurus for the flexibility of Gemini. So Taurus is fixed earth, which is, fixed. It doesn't want to change. And Gemini is flexible. Gemini is adaptable. It is air, which air in itself already is, adaptable because it's so movable. And it's mutable air. So mutable means that it could go either way. That is just moving. It's unstable air energy. It's like a gust of wind that comes and goes. And Gemini, really, they'll just go with the flow with however things are. And if things are boring, they'll inject some Gemini air into there and make things fun. But they're adaptable. They're not really concerned with like, oh, this is the way things are and they have to stay this way forever. They're really open to change, and they invite it and they like it. So Gemini is light, they're bendy, and they'll go wherever their curiosity takes them. And it's one of the really beautiful things about Gemini. I really enjoy Gemini energy. It's one of my favorite signs. So whenever you're in your room and you're comfortable and there's nobody there, you're not wearing your ascendant, you're not wearing your spacesuit, you're kind of in your moon sign. or in your fourth house. You're comfortable, you're eating chips, you're watching Grey's Anatomy, whatever it is that you watch when you're in your comfort zone. So somebody walks in and you put on that spacesuit, and that spacesuit is meant to keep you safe because you don't know if this person is somebody you don't know, you need to make sure that you're okay. So you put on that spacesuit automatically, and what happens? What happens for a Gemini rising? What comes on when they put on their spacesuit? So immediately if somebody enters the environment, Gemini is on, like a little antenna that just like clicks on, right? So you're observing all the details of the person who came in, and you're trying to decipher how this person works and whether they'd be fun. Like, this just like, is this a person who's gonna joke around with me? Should I smile at them? You probably smile because Geminis have beautiful smiles and they often have dimples. You can often tell a rising Gemini or a person with Gemini on their chart because of their dimples, and they're really funny. They like to make other people laugh. So the first way of opening that energy is by smiling. Geminis really seem like seductive magicians to me because they seem like they're so much fun, and it is really difficult to say no to them because you look at them and you know, like, that person is a good time. They're going to be funny, they're lighthearted, they can show me a good time. So that's why I think that they're so magical. So this spacesuit that you're wearing, it has, its little helmet, it has a lens, and it has a filter through which you see the world. So that filter really modifies the way that you see the world, and every sign has a different one. And Gemini has a filter. And how is it that they see the world through that filtered lens, Gemini? You see the world from the first house, and the world looks back at you from the seventh house. So in the first house, what is the environment? How do you see the world, Gemini? What is the world like to you through that filtered lens? So for Gemini, the world is an interesting place. There's a lot of fun to get into. There's a lot of avenues to explore. There's a lot of new things that intrigue you and excite you. You see the world with curiosity. If the world gets boring, that's okay, because you can always change it all up. Gemini is always open to change. If everything is just boring or gray or has just been too mundane for a really long time or for a short amount of time, Gemini is like, that's okay, we could just switch it up. They are not okay. They're not comfortable with routine, and because they're here to be happy and to enjoy themselves, to laugh. And when you have too much routine, it could get stuffy and it can be dusty. So Gemini doesn't like that. They could breathe new life into things. Also, Gemini, the world has a lot of information for you to know, and Gemini likes to know interesting things, and they're very cerebral because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's an intellectual sign, so they are very intellectual, and they like to know things in order to be interesting, and they learn the most interesting things in order to share them and connect with other people. They use their intelligence to meet other people. I have a friend who has Gemini in his chart, and he used to talk about how he would watch documentaries and feel like he was like an expert in a subject, and he was just like, oh yeah, I'm a doctor in paleontology, I watched a documentary. He would always say that. He was a really interesting person. And just people with Gemini in their chart, but Gemini risings period, they like to learn things in order to have more to talk about, because they like having interesting conversations with people. And in order to do that, they don't talk about other people. No, they're not going to talk about people. That's like low grade, like low level. They might get into some, gossip, but generally they like to talk about ideas and interesting things, curious things. So that's really important. And lastly, the world is to you a place meant to be interacted with. You really want to touch everything. You want to get your face into everything and touch everything and see how everything works. And you can't be stopped, Gemini. And that is a really cool trait that you have. So how does the world look back at you from that seventh house? So how do people see you through that filtered lens, Gemini? So the way that people see you, that ends up being your social personality. So those are the characteristics that you generally always have that people associate with you. So what are they for rising Gemini? People see you as a curious person. You're a curious person that likes to learn new things and likes to investigate things in order to have fun. They see you as fun-loving. They see you as just a good time type of person, somebody who is going to be fun. And you can go absolutely anywhere and have a good time. And having a good time is important to you, rising Gemini. You can be seen as kind of wild. Gemini does have that, you know, trademark of, you know, a wild child. And I have a rising Gemini friend who is sort of wild. She has a very straight lace chart, but that rising Gemini is what makes her seem like, you know, life of the party wild girl. And they appreciate that. They like it. It's fun because it gets people's attention. And the reason why they like attention, it's not ego. It's not like Leo likes it for ego purposes, but Gemini likes attention in order to interact with other people. Because if people aren't paying attention to you, then how is it that you're going to talk to them? That's why Gemini likes to stand out and really likes to do things that are out of the box in order to get people's attention so that they could talk to them and they could have more people to play with. It's just, they're very playful. It's a very playful energy. It is that trickster energy because they're always joking around and they're always switching things up and they're very sly. The way that they do things is just, I don't even know how. In Spanish, it's pícaro, but I looked the translation and it was sly, and yes, they are very sly, and it's just very clever the way that they seem, and I really appreciate Gemini energy. And they remind, anytime I talk about Gemini, I always want to talk about butterflies. That's why I'm wearing these earrings. Gemini reminds me of a butterfly because, you know, they have that air element, but think about how whenever you're outside and like everything is gray, but then just like this beautiful like blue and black butterfly just flies by you and just, it like cheers you up. And Gemini people will just cheer you up because they're so lighthearted and effervescent. And it just reminds me of just like a butterfly, just fluttering through your day and just cheering you up. That is what rising Gemini is like. That Gemini rising friend loves butterflies. And this also reminds me of a butterfly because, you know, butterflies are so colorful, and even though they don't really change, they just kind of, they go from being a little worm and then they transform into a butterfly. Transformation is more of a Scorpio thing, but Gemini switches up their appearance, and they can switch up their appearance all the time because they don't like stagnation, and the ascendant is your physical appearance, so they don't want stagnation in their physical appearance. They will chop off all their hair and have short hair, and then they'll have really long hair, and then they'll wear a wig, and then they'll put on their Halloween costume. They love dressing up. They like to look different, and it's important to them to switch up their appearance. Lastly, don't forget that if this doesn't sound exactly like you, that any planets that are in your first house are going to modify the expression of your ascendant, because that entire first house is very much your personality. So if this doesn't resonate, then that could be why. And also if there are hard aspects to your ascendant, that could also modify the energy. So now let's talk about the descendant. So the descendant ends up being your 7th house, Gemini, and for Gemini, that descendant is in Sagittarius. So in the 7th house, we kind of put all the characteristics that we don't associate with ourselves, and we kind of, you know, put them on other people. And we're just like, you know, whenever you see a trait in somebody and you just really don't like it, sometimes it's because that trait, you have it within you, but you don't like it, so you repress it. And the things that we repress, that we don't like, that we see in other people, often are found in the 7th house. And in the 7th house, we get to experience those traits and characteristics in order to be a more well-rounded person. So in the 7th house, Gemini, what is it that you have? And this is a difficult one for me. Maybe it's because I'm a Sagittarius, but I think that of the 7th house with a Gemini rising, as you would like to have partners to travel with, to really gain knowledge and experience and wisdom from. So whereas Gemini is like really fun, and it's really difficult for me to describe Sagittarius as a serious sign, but compared to Gemini, it is serious. So if you understand astrology, you know that like Sagittarius is a wild child, so why would I call it serious? But it's serious when you compare it to Gemini, because Gemini is very lighthearted, and Sagittarius takes things and makes them very philosophical and serious, and makes assumptions and declarations about the world and about life. And you know, it's, you know, a little bit higher, you know, more wise and discerning. So that's what Gemini needs in a relationship. They need a wise partner, not only to gain wisdom from, but to experience things in order to become more wise and maybe perhaps more grounded, because Gemini can be, you know, all over the place. And it's through learning and through exploring the world that they'll be more able to make stability for themselves, and also somebody who can help you see the big picture, Gemini, because you could be too concerned with having a good time that you forget, you know, the big picture. Like really, like you went to a whole bunch of parties, you have all these friends, you're having a good time and you're living the best life. But are you really living the best life? Are these really the things that matter to you and are important to you and are going to mean something in the whole scope of your entire life? That's the kind of question that you get to ask yourself in relationships, Gemini. So to close, I'm going to talk about the celebrity now. And I chose a pretty polemic, how do you say? This is probably a character that not a lot of people like, or I don't know if you guys like him or if you guys know who he is, but it's Charlie Sheen. And I absolutely hate that show, like Two Men and a Baby or whatever it's called, his stupid show. I don't like the show, but I love Charlie Sheen because that, you know, tiger blood thing. I'm a Sagittarius and I am completely entertained. Gemini people are entertainers and he is so entertaining to me. Anybody who has Gemini in the chart, Trump, does things that are just trolly. They do things to troll people and it's because they're jesters and they just like to have a good time and they like to be fun. So let's look at Charlie Sheen's chart. So he actually has his ascendant and his north node and Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, but nonetheless, he has some energy in Gemini aside from his rising. And he has that moon in Sagittarius in the 7th house, obviously. And he has his sun is in Virgo, so he has a lot of Mercury energy. So that can make him more nervous than just a Gemini rising on their own. But think about Charlie Sheen and who he represents, who he is in Hollywood. He is like that bad boy. And he says things and lives life in a way that is very non-traditional. And the thing with Gemini risings is, it's not that they do things to be rebellious, they're just having fun. And they can say things just to ruffle feathers, just to get a laugh out of people and to get, you know, so that they could laugh. And they really are very fun loving, and having fun and doing new things is very important. Stimulation is very important for a rising Gemini person. They need constant stimulation because they'll get bored. So I think that Charlie Sheen is a really good example of a rising Gemini. I like to use like positive examples for all of them, but I think that if you're a rising Gemini, you probably will, unless you have a lot of Earth or a lot of serious Capricorn energy in your chart, you'll probably appreciate Charlie Sheen and how funny he is. But that's all that I have to say for you, Gemini. You're a really funny, interesting, and attractive person. Gemini rising people are extremely attractive. There were so many chaotic people to choose from in the celebrities that I was just like overwhelmed with the number of wild cards that were in the list of rising Gemini celebrities. There were so many of them and I was just like, who do I even choose? Like, you guys are all wild animals, like truly. And I'm a Sagittarius, so that, you know, like Miley Cyrus, you know, Miley Cyrus energy, Sagittarius energy, but Gemini just is on another level, you know? So that's all that I have to say, Gemini. You guys are hilarious. You guys entertain me. You light up the world and you make every day fun. And that is something that not everybody has, because, you know, the world can get kind of serious and Gemini doesn't care. Gemini is just like, man, even if the apocalypse is here, I'm still gonna have a good time. I'm still gonna make other people laugh. So that's the video for today, guys. If you liked it, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to my channel. I put out astrology videos every single week and I will see you in the next one.